True story. 2 weeks ago today, I stood in this mysterious location and shot a video called Receding Hairline Haircut Tip, Cut Your Bangs Straight Across, which is the situation. Even though my bangs are not down, they're up and back, I made that video. And I'm very happy about that decision that the lady that cut my hair at Great Clips made about 2 weeks ago. Here's a comment simply, and I like this name, D. It's just a capital D. I like that. I like the mystery of it. All right, here we go. The comment, quote, 37 3/4 here. So to put that in perspective, I'm 37 and a half, but past a month. So this person, D, and I were like born a couple months apart. I was born April 20th, 1981. If he's just a little bit older, he's probably born in like February or January of 81. So he and I are very similar. We both graduated high school in 99, etc. Here we go. So that's his age. He's basically the same age as me. He says, about the same age as you, and I started losing my hair around 20 years old. I consider myself Norwood 2.5, same as me. But after seeing your hairline, I think I may be full on Norwood 3, which I define Norwood 3 is a visible peninsula where you can't even really comb your hair or push it to the side without it just being obvious that there's a peninsula. That's my definition of Norwood 3. So he's saying, after watching my videos, he's thinking he's Norwood 3. No loss at the crown though, which is where he differs from me, because I definitely have diffuse thinning on top. Whether it's noticeable or not, I have a hairstyle now where it really downplays it, but if you've looked at my videos from in the summer when I was growing out my buzz cut, it's undeniable. So, no loss at the crown though. One of the worst things about it is I have a youthful face, as I say you have too. Thank you. That's my mom. It's funny because if you've seen her in my videos, and I just made one on my other channel, Family Friendly Daddy Blog, where she opens, Thanksgiving Day, it just happened, she opens a 1963 bottle of perfume she's had since she was 5 years old. She's 60 now. And you can see how young she looks. And when she says that she's 60 in the video, people who don't know that would never think that she was 60. But she had just turned 23 when she had me. Like, our birthdays are just a couple of days apart. So she just turned 23 and a half. So I'm 37 and a half. She's 60. I guess 60 and a half at this point. So anyway, let's get back to this. So he says, I could easily pass for early 20s if I still had Norwood 0 or Norwood 1. End quote. So there we go. D, thank you for that. I feel that's very much a great contribution, which leads to this collaboration here. Let's talk about that. Let's imagine, what if we cloned me, and if you get a hold of Naughty Nick's, you know, in a Ziploc bag, you know what I'm talking about? Then you can clone me. But if you cloned me, what if one version of me was Norwood 3, but still had thicker hair up here? Compare right next to me the actual version of me, which is Norwood 2.5 with diffuse thinning. So I think what's interesting question that we should talk about in this video is, which would you choose? And I'm gonna go ahead and answer it immediately. Personally, I would choose this. As far as how it looks, now granted, my confidence and identity is not based on my hair. But if I could choose, hypothetically, which again is just a complete fantasy, it's not real, but in theory, if we were to ask ourselves the question, because I know a lot of you are younger and you're not even past Norwood 2 yet, and you're trying to think, at what point will I noticeably start losing my hair? And you're thinking about these things, and that's one of the reasons you come back watching my videos, because we can kind of flesh this thing out. But it is an interesting question. Imagine being Norwood 3 and having completely, because my hair's thick on the sides. It's always been very thick on the sides. Imagine if my hair was as thick on the sides, or as thick on top as it was on the sides. Well, with a haircut like this, I can really downplay it. It's not obvious. Okay, so thicker hair, but a noticeable peninsula that goes back. Versus having a slightly better hairline, it's more of kind of a little bit of a rounded off V when I pull it back. But it is thinner, to where ultimately I do have to have it this long on top to keep the thinning from being noticeable. Otherwise, we all agree, look great with the zero guard buzz cut. Even people who like me better with hair still admit I still look good with a shaved head because ultimately, quote, I have the right head shape for it. But the trade-off with having diffuse thinning is that you have to have hair that's a certain length for the level of diffuse thinning I have. It's not bad diffuse thinning, but I can't get away with having short hair. If it's only an inch or an inch and a half, and I kind of have a messy spike look, you can see my scalp. So that's one of the reasons I feel very comfortable with this hairstyle now, and I'm just always trying to find what's going to be the best fit for me. So I feel if you could choose, obviously it's better to have thinner hair on top as long as you've still got a better hairline, because you can still manage that with the right length without making your hair too long. But what if I'm wrong? See, one of the things that separates Nick Shell from most people on the planet, unfortunately, most people go around their whole life thinking this. Well, don't you think if I were wrong, I would know it? And so people get caught up in their own false versions of reality, which is why Nick Shell always says anything you believe about hair loss is true in your own mind. Because if I try to convince you otherwise, then you're simply a victim of identity protective cognition, and anything I say will only reinforce what you believe. So that's why I want you to believe what you believe. So therefore, I could be wrong. So what do you think? If you had to choose between Norwood 2.5 with diffuse thinning, which ultimately dictates what kind of hairstyles you have, having to have either shave it off or 2.5, 3 inches on top, or you'd be Norwood 3, but no diffuse thinning. So it's perfectly thick all across, but then you've got the peninsula. Well, by now you're thinking, well, Nick, it's pretty obvious, right? What you said is right. Who would choose the peninsula with thicker hair? Well, here's something else to consider. I think we have to consider, because I think Maxwell Smart, who is a longtime supporter of my channel, he has said that he is basically 20 years older than me, and I think he identifies as Norwood 3, but with no thinning. So he's in his mid-50s with that situation. But it's almost, and this is the way I feel that once the diffuse thinning kicks in, if you continue to progress in your hair loss, it doesn't matter at that point, because that defines you're definitely gonna go bald. I think I'm definitely on the path to balding, but I think a Norwood 3 isn't necessarily. If you still have all your density intact, in theory, I predict that guy is gonna hold on. A Norwood 3 with no diffuse thinning, I think has a better chance of keeping that hair most of the rest of his life compared to me, which, okay, so my hairline's slightly better, but I think over the years to come, my density is going to get so low that eventually I would have been better off choosing to be Norwood 3 with no density loss. It's all hypothetical, but it's a fun exercise to sort out. So I'm very grateful for that comment. Which, speaking of, I would love for you to leave a comment right here. Why? Because I am Nick Shell. Who am I? The cult leader of the Brotherhood of the Hair Loss and the leader of the hair loss zombie apocalypse.